So we'll get started. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the first IT at Cork Diversity and Tech event of 2021. The topic we'll be discussing today is hot skills of the future, and our four panellists will be discussing recent trends, changes in the job market, jobs that will be in demand, and what companies can do to ensure that their employees have the necessary skills for the future. I'd like to thank everybody who has taken the time to join, and thank you to our panellists who will share their insight into hot skills of the future. I'd also like to give special thanks to Berkeley Recruitment Group for sponsoring this event today. If you do have any questions throughout, please feel free to submit these and we'll aim to get to these at the end if we do have time. So firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Megan Kearney and I'll be your MC for today. I'm currently working in the cybersecurity industry as a security analyst. I have a keen interest in information technology and I have sharpened my career focus with a master's degree in cybersecurity from Cork Institute of Technology. I would now like to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers we have today. TJ, welcome. We'll start with you if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me. My name is TJ. I'm about to work on the people operations team in a company called Tigera. I start next week, and previous to that, I've just spent the last 4 years in a SaaS company in Cork called Teamwork, and I'm delighted to be here.
Great, thank you. And Louise, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Louise. I work on the IT team here in Berkeley Group. I focus on the IT infrastructure, security, cloud, market myself, and manage a team then with the software development side of things also. So I've been working, I suppose, 4.5 years now in recruitment, and I'm fairly familiar with the Cork market in general. So spanning across the national as well, but Cork being one of the key markets that I would work.
Great, lovely. And Mark, we'll come to you next.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Jordan. I'm the Chief Technologist at SkillNet Ireland, and that role responsibility for the technology strategy for the organisation in terms of skills and development deployment, along with the growth strategy for the organisation, both domestically and internationally.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Aisling, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi everyone, I'm Aisling Madriska. I'm a lecturer in the School of Computer Science in UCC, and I'm also an investigator in 2 of the Science Foundation Ireland research centres, Connect, which is the Centre for Future Networks and Telecommunications, and LERO, which is the Irish Software Research Centre. And I'm very much looking forward to contributing to the panel today.
Great, thank you, Aisling. So before we get started on the panel discussion today, I would like to briefly hand you over to Sharon Corcoran from Cork County Council. Sharon is the Director of the Economic Development and Tourism at Cork County Council and will speak for 5 minutes on the work the Council is doing at the moment on mapping the skills base across the county.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Megan, and thanks in particular to IT at Cork for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I promise I won't take up more than 5 minutes, so forgive me if I speak really, really fast. I want to get so much information out there to you. Map My Skills is an initiative that has been undertaken by Cork County Council, which commenced in July of last year. The objective of the initiative is literally to map the skills that exist in Cork City and Cork County to further enhance the attractiveness of Cork as a region for both multinational, indigenous talent or industry, but also for Cork County Council to be properly informed in relation to its strategy around developing remote working hubs in the region. So we do know that there is approximately 2.3 million people in the workforce nationally. We know that 270,000 of those are working in Cork, so that's about 9% of the workforce. And we also know that 42,000 of those are commuting around the county every day into the city. We know that there's about 78% of our workforce in the service industry, and we also know that Cork is famed, I suppose, for its IT skills, its finance skills, its engineering skills, and obviously we have a very strong public sector and service industry as well. What we don't know, or at least when we last knew it officially, was as a result of the 2016 census. We don't know what those skills are, and we don't know where they are in the city and county. So our attempt here is an attempt basically to get people to log on to the site. You'll get the link shortly from Megan, and literally just map their top skills. It's a simple process. It will take less than 2 minutes. There's 5 questions there. The questions are based on your geocode. So that is essentially where you live, what your top 3 skills are, excuse me, the industry you work in, are you a commuter, and if you are, how long does your commute take, and then what's your preferential working mode? Is it hybrid, is it work remotely, or would you prefer to be in the office? The information is anonymous, it's GDPR protected, and we won't have any access to names. We won't even have individual geocodes up on the map that eventually transpires out of this. What we will have is we will have a heat map of Cork, the bigger region of Cork, and we will know where clusters of skills exist, or where the skills exist literally on the map. It allows us to interrogate the map and to find out what language skills are out there, what the top skills in the city and county are, how long people are commuting, where would they like to work? In other words, would they like to work from home? Would they like to work in the office? Do they prefer a hybrid model? You'll all probably be aware that government policy is moving towards having hybrid models of work, which is basically about facilitating employees to work remotely, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, maybe full-time if that's what the employer wants. And I suppose from that perspective, we here in Cork County, we feel we need to develop a network of innovation hubs in conjunction with the private sector now as well. We've great colleagues who already have these hubs up and running, and we're working with them just in terms of trying to establish where these hubs need to be. But the skills map will be invaluable in informing us as to where the skills are and basically what people's preferences are. We know there won't be another census until 2022, and we know also that it usually takes about a year to 18 months for that census to be published. So we won't have realistic figures in this area until probably 2024 at the earliest. I suppose my ask here today really is, I'd love if you could encourage your employees to log on to this site and literally map their skills. As I said, it is GDPR protected, it is fully anonymous, and we are literally doing this to try and better inform our policy in a manner that will, I suppose, get the best out of Cork and exploit Cork's potential going into the future. So look, Vivian and Juliet and Megan, thank you all for giving me the opportunity. I hope I've explained myself clearly. 5 minutes certainly gives you focus and forces you to keep on time and get as much information out there as possible. So look, thank you again. I think you'll be showing the link, Vivian. So look, if there's any questions, please feel free. You can get my details from IT at Cork. If there's any questions around the survey or what we'd be using it for, please do call me and look, I'd love to have a chat with you in a conversation. But I suppose I'm just asking you to help us if you can with this survey. It'll benefit all of us, and the information will be made fully available to anyone who wants it. So thank you, Megan. Good luck with your hour-long webinar today. It's very opportune from my point of view. What are the skill requirements of the future? And good luck with it. I'll be interested in hearing what you have to say.
Great. Thank you so much for that
Thanks,
overview,
Megan.
Sharon.
Thank you.
And just to confirm, we will be giving that link out to everybody as well. So let's get started, I suppose, on the hot skills of the future. Self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. These are no longer the fantasies of sci-fi authors or Hollywood directors, and this is the reality of our future, and the future is almost here. The World Economic Forum says we're on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0. Now, Industry 4.0 will be marked by lightning speed advancements, mind-boggling change as it brings together advances in digital, physical, and biological technologies. So as we look towards the future, it definitely raises the question, what skills will we need to thrive in this brave new world? This pace of change means that employers need to take a proactive role in ensuring they have a workforce equipped with the skills of the future. To accomplish this, employers first need to understand the skills they will need to remain competitive, and then they need to understand how best to prepare and train their current workforce as well, as prepare to source, recruit, and hire the talent of the future. So I suppose it is definitely evident that you have to have top technical skills to make a place for yourself in the competitive tech industry. And as the tech industry is changing at such a rapid pace, the demand for skills is also changing, and it is so important to know what current in-demand skills are. So I'll come to you, TJ, on this one. a question to you with your company and industry experience. What skills have you seen develop over the years, and what major changes have you seen around skills requirement?
Thanks, Megan. I guess I'll show my age a little bit, and I'll take you back to when I first started working in industry. It was back in 2010, and I was working as a recruiter for CPL Recruitment. I'm sure some of you guys might have heard of that company. And Cork as a city has seen such a huge explosion in skill requirements, from software engineering, product design, right through, you know, to marketing, sales, customer success, or relationship management. And if my focus was primarily initially on software engineering and back-end development in Cork, to me anyway, it seemed to be a two-language city. You know, people were either using Java or they were with Microsoft, and they were using .NET. And I think, you know, everyone can see now that those are still hugely popular languages, but we've seen an explosion in other back-end API languages such as, you know, Golang, Python, Ruby. Lots of new languages have come out of there. I think for front-end devs, JavaScript is still the most popular language on GitHub being used today. But there seems to be a new framework every week. It's crazy just to keep on top of it. So Angular was probably the most popular a couple of years ago, and now probably React Vue. But there are new languages coming out every week, which is relentless, and it's a lot of work for people to keep on top of. I guess to give you guys probably a practical example from my own experience, I worked in a company called Teamwork for the last 4 years essentially, and when I joined, we were using Cold Fusion, which was our API language for a programming perspective, which is probably as old as myself, that language, and we were migrating to Go, and then on our front end we were migrating from Knockout, which is a JavaScript framework, over to Vue. And then even during over the last 4 years, I saw a change in, you know, mobile development. You know, just to stick with engineering for a second, we saw, you know, Java move into Kotlin, and we saw Apple then move from Objective-C over to Swift. So people had to learn on the job and on the go these new skills, and they had to pick them up as they went along, as new skills developed and new technical requirements come out. And look, they're probably going to change again in the future, which is the good news or the terrifying news. I think what I learned is, you know, it's not necessarily important to be super proficient in any one of those, but, you know, don't silo yourself if you're a software engineer in one area. Keep atop of new trends. Is probably my one piece of advice to software engineers and people in college as they're studying different languages. Outside of engineering, you know, I think every company has been described as data driven, or to make data driven decisions in job descriptions or in interviews, you know. So like storing, moving, interpreting, analyzing data is now an everyday occurrence in every company. It has to be in the tech industry, at least. You know, marketing will now need to measure their success on pay-per-click campaigns or on SEO keyword campaigns using tools like, you know, Hotjar to understand customer behavior, so they can customize their product to tackle any customer issues. From customer success perspective, just again to move along in the different departments that you might find in a tech company, you know, what I've seen is, you know, that customer success is even a new term for, you know, relationship management or account management. And those people are no longer just soft skill focused. Now they need to have technical abilities to measure, you know, customer adoption rates on their product. You know, how sticky is your product, and people need to become proficient using the likes of Tableau and Google Analytics and Looker. I'm sure there's plenty more tools out there that people will use to track customers using their products. And sales, probably the one I've the least experience in. You know, like there's a new training, and, you know, solution selling is probably the one thing we talked in Teamwork a lot, where we as a company we were trying to move into that solution selling piece, where you're tackling the problem that a customer has with the product that you're selling essentially. So it's no longer a case of picking up the phone and going, how many licenses do you need, and what's your budget? It's more a case of salespeople need to be abreast of competitors. They need to be abreast of different, you know, objection handling techniques to be able to sell their product as a solution to customers' problems effectively. So that's kind of a broad overview. I'm sure people will have opinions on that. Hopefully people won't disagree too much.
Great, thank you, TJ. So I suppose moving on from that, as the demand for people with advanced technical skills is rising, and there are many companies are putting more and more resources into recruiting, hiring and nurturing the right talent to remain in global competition. I suppose this means that employees willing to spend time developing technical skills will have the upper hand in landing some of the most demanding roles within the tech industry. So I'll just come back to you on this one, TJ. How do you think companies can support employees in learning and development going forward?
Yep. So I think what you've just described, what in my head, what you've described there is probably can be encompassed by the term talent management. So that goes from anywhere from your talent acquisition, so your hiring, right through to your retention, so for development and nurturing of talents. Employees today, people today, they no longer want to be static. The days of people spending 20 years in a company are probably coming to an end. And if people feel like they're not being developed by their organizations, if their careers aren't developing, your top talent are going to leave. So there's a big onus on employers, you know, to first of all identify their talents, to identify the key skill sets that of the future. So looking at their vision, where they want to be in 5 years, and identifying the skill sets that they need to nurture within their people to get to where they want to get to as a company. I think that like the most famous, you know, example of talent management is probably comes from, you know, General Electric and their CEO Jack Welch. You know, in the 20th century, they would identify their CEOs very, very early in their career, or their future potential CEOs very early in their career at GE. And they would move them around from department to department and develop them as much as possible. So when Jack Welch was ready to retire, they had a number of options as their future CEO coming up, right? So from a more practical perspective, employers should be, you know, identifying key skills and then bringing in tools. You know, I'm sure like that Mark will go through, you know, his, you know, company in a minute, but, you know, like of Udemy, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, there's tons of online, some of them free, some of them that cost a small bit of money to help develop your people. The more skilled an employee becomes, the more valuable they become to an organization as well. And it, you know, it helps keep your company, you know, maintain a competitive advantage over your competitors. It's been proven to increase productivity. It's been proven to reduce turnover. And from a hiring perspective, people want to work in a company that develops their employees. They want to work in a learning organization, or at least that's something that I would have noticed over the years. You know, I think that I look at teamwork, just to give you an example. The company is, you know, their HR team have put a huge amount of work into developing their people. They've got an education conference allowance where people can go to a conference once a year. If those still exist online now. But back in the day when travel was allowed, you know, people used to go to their, you know, go for conferences or Vue.js in Amsterdam, and Teamwork used to foot the bill for that, because people would pick up, you know, interesting things, new techniques, and bring it back to the company, and people will write a blog about their experience at that conference, right? Every employee at Teamwork gets a Udemy license. You've access to 5,000 courses immediately. They also have brought in a career coach for people to help develop those people as well. And I think one of the big things that we were focusing, you know, over the last couple of years was also investing in managers and their coaching ability, because you need to remember HR can do so much, but 95% of the time people are dealing with their managers when it comes to development conversations. So that was a big thing. Cork, so many, you know, great things available to people in Cork. You know, you look at UCC and trying to get this right, MTU, Munster Technological University, Skillnet Ireland, different springboard courses. There's so much out there for people to tap into, and for organizations to tap into, to help develop their people and to make sure that they have that competitive advantage in the long-term future.
Great, thanks so much for that insight, TJ. So I think from that, we're very much aware that the future of work is happening now. With digitalization, AI and robotics, they're already having a significant impact on work in many sectors. And this trend is expected to increase in pace and intensity in the near term. While predictions vary, I think there's little doubt that most, if not all, jobs will be affected to some degree. I suppose thanks to changes that no one would have wished for, and fueled by the requirements of a digital society. the technology industry will no doubt take a new shape in the coming year. So Louise, I'll come to you on this one. I suppose from your hands-on experience as a recruiter, how have you seen market trends change over the past 12 months, and where do you see there's growing demand?
Yeah, so I guess there's been, I suppose, maybe a number of people who are out there at the moment looking on the market. We have seen massive changes in the industry over the last 12 months. Of course, with COVID, it has, I suppose, given us challenges. Typically for Q1, we always expect it to be incredibly busy. It is busy, which is a good thing, I suppose, for candidates active on the market, but it's a very different type of busy whereby companies are taking their time to ramp up this particular quarter. Hopefully, once we start to see the vaccine rolling out and I suppose things becoming a little bit more settled, we will see things really ramping up into Q2, Q3 and Q4, thankfully. So kind of two parts of the year, which typically we see H1 being particularly busy. We're probably going to see a very busy H2 this year, which is great. It is coming. So positivity on that front, certainly for anybody active on the market. Comes with its challenges, of course, but look, it's all growing and we are getting there. I suppose to couple with that, then we do see candidates obviously much more hesitant in terms of moving. I suppose the security of people in roles with their childcare and maybe personal situations at home, it has certainly made it more challenging for people to look and consider moving. So that job security, you know, has played a really key part for people in the last 12 months. So it's definitely more competitive to get the good talent on the market to move and to consider, I suppose, different options. But look, positively, we are expecting to see a massive increase, I suppose, in H2 in terms of jobs coming out there. Probably an increase of about 25% is expected, which is great for us in the industry. And that will probably come across, you know, IT being one of the key areas, but healthcare, construction, of course, and the life science and engineering part of the world is going to really start to ramp up. So we will see a lot. I suppose mostly what we are seeing is the permanent side of business hiring right now. You know, that's, I suppose, the key players for most businesses is to get their talent permanently in-house. But in saying that, the contingent working space is also going to be very, very pinnacle in the later half of this year. A lot of project work and a lot of businesses are probably going to be ramping up to quite quickly get to grips with maybe projects that have been put on the long finger. So we do expect there to be quite an increase in the contract industry as well over the next 6 to 12 months also. I suppose to loop in and to mirror a lot of what TJ has said in terms of the industries in tech in particular that are growing. IT support, of course, is one of the biggest areas. You know, we're all working remotely. I think the demand there for support people has been massive, like over 100% of an increase are the statistics out there at the moment. So that's one of the most in demand areas for helping all of us as we're struggling at home with the technical issues. The cloud space, of course, is massive. Every company has had to jump this year to a certain extent to get everything cloud-based or as cloud-based as they possibly could to deal with the pandemic and to get people working from home. But I think it's going to be a key part for every CIO's strategy moving forward is the demand there to have that agility and flexibility for people moving forward to be able to really, you know, work in that area. So, you know, those hybrid cloud technical spaces are going to be very, very important just to allow that growth for starts for every business, and for the change and the adaptability is going to be very important. Coupled with cloud, then we always go with data and AI. Everything we do now is recorded, you know, Big Brother is always watching. So data scientists, data engineers, all of those senior kind of AI roles are going to be incredibly important. It's kind of predicted that the cloud-based AI is expected to increase by about 5 times its current pace between 2019 and 2023. So a really key area for growth across the technical space. As we know, everything it is data focused, like a lot of us are on social media. All of that content is going to become invaluable to businesses and how they make decisions moving forward. So data really will be key for so many businesses and how they change and adapt moving forward. And I suppose another key area that has always been a real hub here in Cork in particular is the software development space. Again, as TJ said, you know, all of those changes in the industry with React, Golang, we're really seeing large scale American companies coming into Cork, which is fantastic, offering some really good competitive roles for people. But that React, Golang, all of those more modern languages are really in demand at the moment. So, you know, working across multiple languages is only going to add value to any engineers, I suppose, value on the market. So, you know, keep coding is definitely the way to go, I think. And of course, infrastructure then across the board with our networks and the IT security space is massive. Every company has had to rush to kind of get online. So it's securing all of that and making sure that your business is as protected as it can be. We see all of these cyber threats changing, Megan, as I'm sure you know yourself, on a day-to-day basis. So that is really one of the key areas, as well as the IT security space moving forward. But, you know, look, tech is one industry. We're definitely going to see an increase across finance, the retail sector. When things do come back up and running, we're going to see all of that really improving as well. And the manufacturing industry is going to definitely jump up also.
Great, thank you. So from that, I think we're all quite aware that 2020 demanded we question the way we work. And I think we're more so aware that 2021 will demand the answers to that. So the world emerges obviously from a chaotic year, and there's little opportunity to return to the old way of doing things. So the year 2020, obviously, as we're aware, brought the economic disruption created by COVID-19. But as we put 2020 in the rearview mirror, I suppose we now hear people say we won't return to the way things were before, and 2021 is the year of redefining work. So as many organisations and the people working within them have had to transition to a new way of working almost overnight. So I suppose following on from your previous insight there, Louise, what changes have there been to employment trends over the past 12 months?
Yeah, so look, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we've definitely seen candidates a little bit slower to make the moves. A very competitive candidate market out there at the moment because of redundancies and whatnot. So it is a tough space for people. So we're certainly seeing an increase with the candidates active, which I suppose for companies is great because they obviously get some fantastic talent. But from I suppose an expectation point of view from the candidate side, remote working is without a doubt here to stay, which is great. But I think a lot of people are really striving for that flexibility in terms of work-life balance. You know, at-home office balance is going to be really important moving forward. I think any company that's going to come in with a 100% on-site role, again, you know, when in the industries that it can be done, most people aren't going to really look at it anymore because they want the flexibility. You know, working from home works. People are more productive, so it's going to be a very important aspect for people. Training and upskilling is probably another key area. People have really taken this time, I think, when we can't be social and out and about as much, to upskill. And TJ touched on it earlier, but you know, all of that businesses supporting their I suppose employees to upskill, to train, encouraging it. You know, a lot of people want to see if companies are supporting it down the line as well. So that's really something which, yes, it was important to people previously. It's certainly becoming a little bit more evident now that it's a key question that we get asked. To coincide, I suppose, with the permanent hiring as well, we're seeing interview processes for anybody who's going through it at the moment. They are taking a little bit longer on the permanent side. What would typically take maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks is kind of extended to 3 to 6, maybe 8 weeks in some instances. So for anyone doing it at the moment, stick with it. It's taking a little bit longer, but things are moving. We've certainly found the clients have not lost their headcount, which is the main thing, but it is taking a little bit longer to get everything over the line. So persistency is key there, definitely there. As I mentioned, look, candidates are slow to move. So, you know, if you're, I suppose, in the position for hiring, it's the flexibility, it's the, you know, how can we support childcare, all of that sort of stuff. People are really looking at that now, you know, like when you are at home, if you have small people that you have to take care of, you know, it's another full-time job. So that is really, really important for people now. It's understanding the flexibility. So flexibility really is key for any companies. I don't know if people will like it, but the virtual recruitment aspect of recruitment is certainly here to stay. I think it's a real time saver for companies because they don't have to get 2 people in one room at the same time. So, you know, the building the relationships over camera is going to be here to stay. A lot of companies will try and do at least one face-to-face when we can. There's I suppose no two ways about that, but virtual will definitely be a good starting point for a lot of companies. And I suppose the global recruitment process is going to be bigger because we can see people working from anywhere in the world now. We're going to see more companies looking across Europe and I suppose everywhere really that is if able to do that, especially in the tech industry. When they can work remotely, they'll be looking at them remotely from anywhere. So that is a positive for people, certainly. Retention is probably one of the biggest challenges for companies at the moment. I think it kind of costs on average between 6 and 9 months of a person's salary if they move on. So what we are seeing now is companies really working to keep their talent. If someone does decide to move on, we are seeing counter offers there. We are seeing companies really trying to keep people. So, you know, it is a big challenge in the market, but I think we always kind of come back out there with the, you know, you looked to move for a reason. What are the new challenges? Kind of stick with that. Money's only a short-term solution, you know. So it is a challenge on the market, definitely, for every company. They want to maintain their talent. And finally, I think the biggest thing we're going to see as well is the contingent working space. Those contract roles are going to come back. Definitely in H2, we're going to see an increase. We've flipped a little bit more to the permanent side of the market right now for initial hires, but we're going to see contract coming back big time over the next 6 to 9 months.
Great. Thank you, Louise. So just to touch more on the point of digital transformation now, I suppose contrary to popular belief, digital transformation is less actually about technology and more about people. So adapting to an ever-changing digital landscape is integral for business success today. And a quality digital transformation strategy relies on embracing the change across an entire organization and not just within the IT department. So to put this into some context for you all, technology is the engine of digital transformation, the data is the fuel, the process is the guidance system, and the organizational change capability is the landing gear. We need them all and they must function well together. So Mark, I'll come to you on this one. Can you provide some insight into how a company can approach change for this digital transformation?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. I think that just to bring it to life a bit, we Skellet Island as an organization have really thought long and hard about our engagement level with companies and really what will appeal to them. And obviously, digital adoption is one of the areas that's key. What we're calling green acceleration, which is heading towards a low carbon economy, sustainable business model. And then this notion of helping SMEs become more productive and competitive are the key areas that we look at. And what we've tried to do and what we're doing is build frameworks for those companies as they start thinking and backing into the need for transforming themselves. And a lot of the when we assess and when we evaluate companies and when we talk to them via our networks, you know, we're talking to them about areas about how do we align talent to business strategies, i.e. how do we back into the end goal for the company and what's required in order to achieve that goal? What are the key components of that? What is the culture of the business, and how do we start developing the type of cultural standards that will lend themselves well for transformation and innovation? What is the ecosystem and what is the competitive landscape and the segmentation that the business is working within? And finally, what are the key elements of transformation and the adoption of digital technologies that will be required for the company to be successful? And what we try and do is engage at that level so that we can start understanding the mixture between technical and transversal skills that we can build into a program of work or a framework to deliver specifically to that company. And so we're really all about two things here. We're really all about protecting and growing the FDI here in Ireland, but also helping with Indigenous business growth. And in particular, really focused in on those scaling SMEs that have kind of grown and grown and grown, but haven't really transformed the way they do, business, they're not as lean as they could be, they're not as innovative as they could be. And so, we will work with them in really 3 areas. So we'll look at the components of those businesses. What are the leadership needs from a talent perspective? How do you really tailor programs specifically for leaders? How do you look at the wider workforce, and what are the technical skills required? TJ spoke about all of the adapting and changing technologies and all the skills and trying to keep up with that pace. It's a big challenge for us, but we deliver, we try and look around the corner to deliver as many of those as we can to understand what's coming, especially around the future world of tech needs. And then really a real key area for us is the returners into the workforce, or those people that are pivoting from perhaps a hard-hit sector into a growth sector. So a great example of that, and a bit of a plug for IT at Cork and our SkillNet network there, is the CyberQuest program, which is a pathway initiative for individuals to move from a sector where they've created a good set of core skills, and take those and then upskill so they can be competitive in areas of cybersecurity where we know there'll be growth jobs. And we have a number of pathway programs that lead into digital and technology type roles as they emerge. And we heard Louise talk about the high demand that's expected in the second half of this year, and we support that because we see these sectors growing. And so it's really important for us that we're equipping the workforce and helping people pivot into the sectors where these roles will emerge, and equip them to be competitive when they're looking to be hired. And what's great about some of our pathway programs, they involve obviously a high level of technical learning, transversal learning, but there's also a mentoring component, and there's also the assignment with companies component of that, where the person on that program gets to spend some time with the company and understand and maybe work with them for a little while whilst they're undergoing this program. So these are great areas for us, and we see a tremendous amount of opportunity and growth in those 3 areas of addressing the leadership of an organization, the wider workforce, and then the returners into the workforce as well.
Great, thank you, Mark. So as our world and the workforce continue to rapidly evolve, I suppose it's clear that we all need to develop alongside it if we're going to keep up with the changes that are happening. So due to the speed of change in the future workplace, people have to be agile and able to embrace and celebrate the change. So while the future is more ambivalent and uncertain than ever, we're confident that a pretty strong bet on the future is to focus on reskilling and upskilling, as you mentioned there, Mark, so that they are better equipped to adjust to change. So technical and social skills are equally important parts of the talent equation. And as employers and individuals work to understand the skills gap and prepare for the changing world of work, they need to consider both of those. So Mark, at SkillNet, the belief is that maintaining a highly skilled workforce is essential to our national competitiveness. And I couldn't agree more with that. So can you provide some insight into how an organisation can make the change vertically and both horizontally to change and I suppose grow with the digital transformation and required future hot skills?
Yeah, and again, it's a lead on from my points below. Again, it's the way that we engage with companies. And you're right, there's a vertical component and then there's a horizontal component to that. And what do I mean by vertically? So that's helping a business understanding how to develop a strategy, and in particular how to develop a digital strategy or a future world of work strategy, competitive strategy. And that's quite important because that's kind of a fundamental for any organization to be able to have, large or small. The next area is around leadership and culture. And the cultures have changed within organizations recently. Remote working, as we've been talking about, there's a big focus, as Louise mentioned, on talent retention. And that's all important because of the virtual nature now of finding another job and the dispersed nature of the workforce. the companies need to be very smart about how they think about retaining people, and there's a mixture of compensation and career development built into that. And it's important that we help organizations create a culture, and so there are training programs and initiatives that we can build around that really help with management resilience and leadership agility, and just what that cultural dynamic of the organization should be. The next area is around talent and teams, and it's to follow on again from the previous point, which is how do you, knowing that the workforce is dispersed, people have been working from home, but it's really important to focus in on making sure that talent is being developed, and that's talent of the workforce, but those leading the workforce as well. So helping managers with things like remote performance management techniques, helping leaders and managers understand how to better measure performance, how to use data and the analytics from data to be able to tell them the health of the workforce and the health and the performance of the business. The next area is around marketplace enablement, or customer retention, if you will. And that's really around what does the future go-to-market strategy for a company look like, and how can we help develop the talent within an organization that wasn't there before. So perhaps it's areas like digital marketing, or better use of search engine optimization, and just understanding internet traffic, or even if it's just building a digital platform or a website, and just knowing that they need to develop certain skills to be able to do that. And then the last area is what we call operational excellence, and that's really sort of understanding and changing and transforming the way a business's operation runs. Is it as productive as it could be? Is it as agile as it could be? Is it as cost effective as it should be? And what are the technologies that underpin that operating model and for that business? And so it's not just a simple question of saying digitalization is just implementing technology and getting on with it. We think of it really holistically, and it's quite an intensive engagement with companies on that vertical side. Then if we look horizontally, we look at roles, and what are the changing roles within an organization? How is the C-suite role changing? How has it changed in the last 12 months? You know, is it fit for purpose? You know, are the people there, you know, developed enough, trained enough, skilled enough to be able to manage the business through a transformation? What has happened there? What has happened in areas like sales and marketing? You know, what are the new skills, the skills of the future that are required for that role and for anyone in that role to stay competitive? Same regards to product development, quality control, our operations as well. All of these roles have changed and will change as businesses transform within the future world of work. And what we're trying to do through our kind of framework model is to really dig deep. Once we've understood the high-level strategic goals of the business, and we've gone through all of those vertical elements, is then talk about the horizontal impact that we can make to the roles within the organizations. And we're delivering programs around that, again, tailored towards the leadership, the wider workforce, and then those returning into the workforce or those entering the workforce. So that's really what our proposition looks like in terms of transforming business.
Great, thank you for that, Mark. I suppose continuing on from the evolvement of the workforce now, something we hear and see quite regularly, almost like a buzz phrase you could say, is lifelong learning. So today you can pretty much buy any technology, but our ability to adapt to an even more digital future depends on developing the next generation of skills. Increasingly, Ireland is competing globally on the basis of talent and on Ireland's growing reputation for innovation. So winning that war for talent can be achieved by ensuring that all of Ireland's citizens have access to the skills they need to succeed, and Irish business has the people with the skills that they need to grow. So Aisling, I'll come to you. Would you agree and say that the importance of immersive technical education and further studies will have more of an added benefit in the future? And I suppose that would be in preparation for having the right skill set going out into the workforce.
Absolutely. I mean, I think to touch first on lifelong learning, I suppose it is really this umbrella term, and it takes into account training and education. So it could be, you know, Mark touched on it earlier, it could be someone who has a core set of skills in a field that's hit a hard time and they're trying to pivot into a new space. It could be somebody who's undertaken an immersive technical degree and then wants to specialize in a certain field like data science. Or, you know, it could be one of these springboard type initiatives where you upskill. Equally, it could just be that, you know, you're in your permanent position and you want to undertake some, you know, CPD in a particular space. And TJ mentioned some of those MOOCs and various services earlier on. But I think there is a distinction between, you know, training and education and the modes. I mean, there's a need for all of these different types of lifelong learning. But to go to one of the words, I suppose, innovation, I think if we're going to long term, if we want to increase innovation in Ireland, and if we really want to set ourselves up as an innovation-based economy, you know, in terms of ICT, we're going to have to increase the people who have a background in immersive tech. You know, they've been educated in an immersive technical experience, and they really understand how systems work and how the technology works in a very deep way. I think that's vital. You know, I suppose if you think back to really all the success stories we know in terms of ICT, and typically they're associated with, you know, someone innovating in their garage. Now we've moved beyond that. You know, we've heard about innovation hubs and all these environments. But ultimately, if you boil all that down, that's somebody who has an engineering or a computer science background that has a good idea. And yes, they might need, you know, to have business skills and marketing skills and all these things to support it. But you first have to have that good idea. So you have to have a problem, and you have to be able to understand how the technology can solve it. So I suppose, you know, how are we going to develop that? Well, the only way we can do that, or there's a number of ways, is that we can get, I suppose, more people to undertake these immersive technical degrees. There's challenges there, you know, I suppose not least in terms of capacity of universities, which have really been grossly underfunded for the last decade. Hopefully that will change. And then getting people to select for these courses. So there's a big challenge in actually getting people to undertake these deeply immersive degrees. They do, but in the sufficient numbers that we need in order to address the talent shortage that we have. There have been some positive, I suppose, developments in the last few years that I think are important, and to go back to the point of innovation that will address this. So there's been the creation of the Science Foundation Ireland Centre for Research Training. There's a number of them. There's a Centre for Research Training in Advanced Networks for Sustainable Societies, which is hosted out of UCC. There's another one as well for a CRT and AI, also hosted out of UCC. There's another for out of Trinity, looking at it's called DREAL. It's digitally enhanced realities. So this one of the skills that wasn't mentioned earlier on, actually, that's in demand, is the whole idea of UI, user experience, user interface design. That's hugely in demand, particularly when we're all working remotely, and we're going to see this rise of immersive tech and immersive realities with AR and VR. And then there's the Centre for Research Training and Machine Learning, which is headed out of UCD. But to explain what these are centres for research training where they're training people in postgraduate education, so PhD education. Now, typically people kind of think that people with PhDs are overqualified and that they're going to go into academia. That's a very old notion. In fact, majority of people with PhDs now actually go into the workplace. Now, the benefit, I suppose, of hiring people with postgraduate qualifications like this is, they're really expert problem solvers. That's what you're doing when you're doing a PhD. You're failing continuously. You're being criticized continuously, but you're honing what's your problem, what's your solution, why is it different, and why does it work? And you've become an expert problem solver at the end of that. And these centres for research training as well, they have a number of industry partners. So actually a lot of these PhD students are working with industry partners, and the projects, they either have prolonged placements in industry, or the industry partners actually posed the problem that they're working on. So really, I think if we're going to innovate in the long term, we have to increase funding for initiatives like this, funding into our research centres, because ultimately something that looks like blue sky now won't be blue sky in 10 years' time. So you have to seed this in order to have a pipeline coming through, and looking at building our capacity of students who undertake these immersive, deeply technical degrees. I think that's very important if we're going to innovate in the long term.
Great, thank you. I think we mentioned briefly earlier, and we're all aware that we are currently in the midst of an IT skills shortage. And as these new technologies grow in popularity, the demand for skilled IT professionals only becomes more crucial. And that's due to our reliance on the technological services in our everyday lives. But it does seem that the issue of IT skills shortage is more than an industry recruitment problem. So I suppose, Aisling, as a lecturer in third level education, and being very much aware of the skills required in the industry and the skills gap that may be expanding, do you think there's more that we could be doing from an early education side of things?
Yeah, I mean, the talent skills shortage is there for the last decade. It's just been looking for different skills, and it's probably going to be around for the next 10 years or more as well. So, I mean, fundamentally, if we want to address this long term, we're going to have to make sure that the pipeline coming through is bigger, that we have more people joining it. So, I mean, there's a number of challenges. If we go back to even second level, we have this computer science curriculum that's after being deployed for Leaving Cert, which is in its infancy. I believe it was offered for Leaving Cert last year or the year before for the first time. I mean, the challenge there is that it's only available in a pilot set of schools. So, this isn't a widespread curricula that's available to students. So until we have these options available at second level, I think you're going to have a limited number of people who are self-selecting for these types of courses, particularly actually among females, because studies have shown that typically teenage female students are more kind of risk averse, and it's a case of that phrase, if you can't see it, you can't be it. If they don't know what they're signing up for, they won't sign up for these courses. So I think there needs to be more widespread rollout of computer science curriculum nationally, and we're not going to see a huge number, a huge increase until that happens. With respect, I suppose, to early years, I think there's a lot of initiatives in place actually for early stage, primary school students, perhaps maybe not in a formalized way, but there's lots of these STEM initiatives, where you see them building Lego robots, coder dojos, things to get them involved in computer science. My concern actually would be, and I see it with my own young kids, is we're going to have this generation of very tech savvy, consumers, but do they understand? You see them swiping and you see them, pausing and pressing play at a very early age, and that's great. But do they really understand how these systems work? And I think the answer is they don't. And the more closed down the systems become, the more they won't look under the hood. So I think we really need to ask ourselves, if we want to put a particular branded tablet into every school, if that's actually, the best way to go about things. Do we want systems where we give someone a 40 or 50 euro Raspberry Pi type device, and we let them, develop systems with it, and actually, let them tinker around with it in a way that we can develop the next generation of innovators. So I think that's going to be important as well. I suppose a last point, I think that we all need to be cognizant of, I suppose, I wonder sometimes if we've fallen short in terms of how we explain the power of computer science, or how we explain how it can empower and really transform our lives. I often find when, you know, not just ourselves at third level, but those in industry, we're doing our best in terms of outreach and speaking to the next generation about the power of computer science. Do we really paint the picture of how it can transform all sectors, from agri-tech to fintech to health, to climate, to food growth? And you know, certainly someone will go, well, what's tech? What's a sensor got to do with food production? But if you can paint the bigger picture and say, okay, well, you know, we could join together a number of sensors and have an adaptive irrigation system, and that would mean that, you know, that would yield, you know, a higher amount of crops, for example, and then that leads into greater food production, and then that's you know, that's addressing this food shortage that we're going to have with the next you know 2 billion people that we're going to have by 2050. So paint this bigger picture so that people become excited about wanting to go into computer science and that it can address the big problems. Then I think the rest of it will take care of itself if we can actually get people to, you know, to want to do this. So I think that's one of the things as well that we have to be cognizant of, how we paint the picture about computer science when we're trying to really inspire our next generation.
Great, thanks so much, Aisling. I think there's some very valid points there in some of your statements about the early education as well. And I suppose thank you to each one of you on the panel for providing such in-depth information and the overview of the hot skills of the future. So we have about 4 minutes left in the webinar today. So I'd just like to do just a quick recap, and I'll come to each one of you and ask maybe that you share one takeaway point from each of the areas that you spoke about. So one, I suppose, important point that you can share with the people who attended today. So TJ, I might come back to you first on this one.
Yeah, I think I'll, you know, if I look at it from two perspectives, one for the employee, the individual, I would say to everybody, it's really important, or it's a good idea to set out professional goals for yourself, right? Make yourself a CPD plan. If you know what that is, Google it, CPD. Talk to your peers, talk to HR and the company you might work for on guidance on how to achieve those goals, so you know where you want to be in 5 years' time. And then from the other side of the fence, from employers' perspective, I guess, you know, companies need to look at their vision, where they want to be in 5-10 years down the line. What skills are going to be needed within the people that they have, and how are they going to develop those people? What new market share do they want to capture? What products do they want to bring out? So their people are going to help them get there, and you need to ensure employers need to ensure that they have the right skill sets in place for people.
Great, thanks so much, TJ. So I'll move to you next, Louise. I suppose, what's the most important point that you would like to make or share with everybody?
Yeah, I think just maybe mirroring what everyone has said is the curiosity and the advancement in education and training. I think that the more hungry people are to advance, the better skills obviously we're going to have in the future. So if ever anyone is considering doing courses and whatnot, I think the upskilling is going to be really important for what we see in the next generation, and encouraging the younger generations coming up as well to get involved in the technical industry, especially females. Of course, we don't have enough of them in the industry. So encouraging all of that coming up is going to be very important. So curiosity and education will definitely be key.
Absolutely agree with all of that. Mark, moving on to you.
Well, you know, I would echo the sentiments of everybody that's spoken today, and I would say that if you're a business representing a business, or if you're in the workforce, consider how you can continue to grow and develop, and this notion of lifelong learning is ever more important. If Ireland's going to compete on the global stage, the workforce must have that as kind of part of its DNA. And I think there are supports out there that are readily available and easy to consume and understand, and I would encourage anybody to look to those supports and continue on their lifelong learning journey.
Great, thank you. And Aisling, I suppose you have a takeaway point to add in there?
Yeah, I think actually to pick up on one of the things I suppose TJ mentioned earlier, you know, he mentioned about how programming languages that come and go and technologies come and go, and that's going to always be the case. You know, this sector is always changing. So I really think there needs to be this long-term strategy of building a pipeline that's sustainable, so one in which we can, I suppose, get people that have a deep understanding, and that's key, a deep understanding of technology and how the wider technology works together to essentially address the problems that we all face at the moment, because that's what computer science is. It's solving the problems that we as people and a population have created. So I think going forward, it's about creating this pipeline from the early stages that's going to feed all the way through, and then making sure that when we are educating people, at least at the third level stage, that they're getting this deep technical background that will allow them to pivot and will allow them to change. It's not training, it's education, that they can understand where everything knits together in order that they can roll with the changes in technologies. I just want to end on one point. There's this one, in AI and machine learning at the moment, there's this big focus on deep learning, and it's the hot topic at the moment. Deep learning really is based on this idea of neural networks, which is around for 70 years. So you'll actually find a lot of these technologies are just building on something that's kind of been there before. And if you appreciate where something came from, you can kind of see better where things are going in the future. So I think that this wider notion of how technology works and why it's working a certain way and when to use it is very important.
Great, thank you. So just with your last point there, we've just gone a minute over time. So I know there are a couple of questions that we didn't get to today, but we will take these offline and we will try and get back to everyone who's put a question in. So I'd like to thank you all for attending, and I hope it did give you some insight into the hot skills of the future. I'd also like to just mention again that the link to the survey Sharon was speaking about earlier on in the webinar will be given at the end. So please take the time to review and fill this in as well. So I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Great, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Megan.
Great, thank you.